Thank you, everybody. Today I'm here talking about restoring a student's head, neck and trunk relationship, critically reflecting on the design and delivery of a research-based exercise framework and teaching strategies to minimise forward head position for singers. So I'll be going through my background, justification, aims and objectives, methodology, ethics inside a research, results, findings, summary, conclusion, recommendations, and my own personal reflection. So here is my background. I'm a Peri teacher and a private singing teacher with mainly students aged between 15 and 18. My lesson times often between 15 and 30 minutes. And with increased levels of screen time, desk work and carrying heavy bags, I was experiencing students with increased forward head position. So I wanted to find out the best way to serve them so that I could prepare their body for singing. Here are some illustrations exampling how forward head position affects muscles around the neck and the trunk area, and the impact of that, including reduced efficiency in breathing, posture, pitch, and resonance. So I wanted to deepen my understanding of motor and somatic learning, devise and create an exercise program that could be used between singing lessons, and investigate the experience by the participants of their use of those exercises, and then the perceived impact on their voice from their perspective and that of listeners, and then reveal opportunities for further research and raise awareness in the wider teaching community. Previous studies highlighted the effect of high heels on the voice, and with a raised centre of gravity, increasing muscle tension, reduced proprioception, and then restrictions to vocal ease, which was also an impact of forward head position, highlighted by Rollings in 2017 and 2012, and Gilman, Johns and Dieter in 2005, and Gilman and Johns in 2017. So to find out more about motor learning and how I could construct an exercise program, I took an integrative literature review covering the last 20 years so I could see the evolution of how motor learning has evolved over time, and using a hermeneutic framework to cite forwards and backwards salient literature. The motor learning principles are broad, is quite a large subject area. It's considered an internalised process by which an individual is able to acquire or modify their capabilities physically and neurologically to perform a skilled movement that can be reproduced. However, those skilled movements not only align with learning something specific, but also day-to-day practice and how our bodies can adapt. I wanted to focus on stages of learning, practice structure, practice schedule, and the focus of attention. So looking at the literature with regards to the stages of learning, Fitz and Posner's 1967 three stages of learning is one that is quite commonly associated with motor learning theory. However, reaching a level of autonomy is suggesting that there's nothing else to learn, potentially. Every performance per se could be faultless. But what happens if we do experience a fault, or we're overcome by postural environmental conditions that prevent us from doing what we want to do? Well, Bertolli et al. In 2012 thought of a motor action plan, an MAP plan, which would use type 1 autonomous and type 2 cognitive learning, and an interplay between the two depending on what they are experiencing in performance. And in addition to that, Tani et al. And Correa et al. In 2014 and 2015 started to understand the adaptive process of motor learning, addressing the need to adjust to overcome obstacles in the performance and also day to day. This falls in line with a reflective hermeneutic cycle of learning, which would enable problem solving in performance, suggesting stabilisation is only a transitionary process. The practice structure for me, I wanted to find out what was best applicable to my exercise program. I found that constant was going to be preferable for novices in order for them to build up stabilisation in their movement of the forward head position so that they could return back to a normalised alignment with more efficient use. However, there is some suggestion that a variable approach would be good, but not so appropriate for novice learners. Tani et al., also quite an integral person speaking about the order of how we practice and how we learn motor learning skills, suggests that an alternative model of non-equilibrium is considered recommended, because it means that we're always in a state of imbalance, and actually achieving full equilibrium is hard and difficult to maintain, which as a singer may increase stiffness and rigidity in our body, which is unhelpful for our singing. So the practice schedule, I decided that I went forward one. A practice schedule could also be random or blocked. However, again, due to the time frame and the project, I felt that having a blocked practice meant that the novice participants could actually then build up some skill set, and a future development would be then to have much more random practice. One bone of contention within motor learning is the focus of attention. Gabrielle Wolfe in 2013 argued that internal focus of attention would be detrimental to the efficiency and effectiveness of the performance outcome. However, Tone and Moran state that there are benefits to be gained from an individual with a proficient level of motor skill learning to actually use their internal focus for refinement and improvement. In addition, awareness of a singer's voice is something that I was made aware of in a previous study using Alexander technique in the voice studio in order for them to help understand how their body is being used. In addition, Laura Mittal's study in 2017 suggested that a global effect of regulating neck muscles actually gave a positive effect for the whole body. So maybe the focus of attention has to alter. Maybe we need to use a combination of the two, which moved me on then to Dewey's reflective cycle of learning, and also the drawing upon hermeneutic circle of learning. So we're constantly adapting, cycling between the parts and the whole to enable change, both physiologically and for singing. So the exercise program, I chose to use constant practice blocked over a period of 6 weeks, consistently 3 times a week. And then the exercises themselves had a combination of internal and external focus. So my rationale for the exercises, I conducted another small systematic literature review, and I found 8 papers that focused on the target demographic for my exercise program and looked at exercise, forward head position, and particularly adolescents as searching operators within Google Scholar. And I wanted to avoid postural disorders because my participants would be asymptomatic, and limited equipment being used to make it as accessible as possible for the participants. However, postural measurements were all taken from a static position and not movement. So I wanted to find out how long should the exercise program last. Well, I had initially stated that I'd like to do a 10-week program, but with time limitations and looking at the research, I felt that actually 8 weeks would have been more appropriate. But again, due to the time frame of the students and participants, 6 weeks was my target. And so we arranged an exercise program that took 6 weeks, and they were to do the exercises 3 times a week, and they lasted for 15 minutes. So the construction of the exercise program included a warm-up, which was mainly focusing on awareness and body balance, stretches of the key areas of tension, the pectoralis minor, sternocleidomastoid and levator scapulae, and to strengthen the deep cervical flexor muscles, trapezius and rhomboids, readdressing the position of forward head position. So for the research element of the project, I wanted to take on a qualitative research case study to understand and reform my pedagogy and actually understand how this works for me as a teacher. Understanding the multiple realities of each student that I teach, I had to take into consideration all of their lived experiences, both within the study and also how external parts influenced their experience. To triangulate my research, I made sure that I incorporated multiple methods, and then for listening observations, I recruited 5 listeners unknown to the project to listen to a recording of one of the participants. Recognising the ethical considerations of using under 18s, I obtained parent and guardian consent. I myself have a DBS, and I made sure that online safety and safeguarding was taking place, along with regular wellbeing checks with the participants. As an insider researcher, I also made sure that I accounted for my biases. So I recruited 5 listeners to listen to a recording of one of my participants unknown to me and the project. The benefits of being an insider researcher was that I was able to witness the project as a whole, get a context of their lived experience, and guide their responses to target the areas that I was interested in. The limitations is that I wanted to see a positive outcome, and the participants potentially might have wanted to please me. So I was aware of this as part of my analysis. The limitations are as follows. The first two participants actually struggled to access the video at the very, very beginning. There was a commitment to study issue for P2 as they were unable to complete the three exercise sessions a week. And due to COVID, there were increased levels of screen time and uncertainty, which affected sometimes their stress levels and well-being. There was no in-person contact either, so I was unable to adjust the exercises, but I was able to guide them with any troubles and challenges that they were having to overcome. And with varied sound quality online meant that that had to be taken into consideration with the listener perception. So the three questions I wanted to answer were: how do the participants perceive the impact of the exercises on their singing? Can a listener perceive any impact on their singing? And how practical is it for me to implement these exercises in between students' lessons? Coding the experiences of the participants, I grouped the answers into posture, resonance, confidence, pitch and breathing in relation to their diaries, and I used those same themes to explore answers to interviews and responses to the listener perception questionnaire. As you can see, their posture improvement was quite obvious from the very, very beginning, which is not a great surprise, bearing in mind this is a postural exercise regimen, with the following responses felt by all three participants. The most interesting observation, though, for me was not necessarily how it benefited their body, but actually the changes of their awareness from very beginning stages in their pre-study, lack of awareness of their body and how it felt, through to the end of the study where they had increased awareness. And this was something that I wanted to explore further. Moving on then to breathing, quite a surprising one there actually, that initially P1 didn't notice any changes to their breathing at the very start, but recognised that an improvement at the end of the exercise regimen. And that also impacted on improved pitch, dynamics and ease, which was demonstrated in their closing questionnaire. Resonance. There was a bit of a conflict here with regards to the understanding of what resonance meant for me. I wanted to understand how their personal resonance felt as a singer, but P2 felt that they were talking about resonance with regards to the room that they were in. However, they did acknowledge on one occasion when they switched rooms that they attributed the resonance change to their voice rather than to the room that they were actually in, with comments from P1 and P3 suggesting that they were able to increase their resonance with better tone, changes of dynamics. With regards to pitch, again, it was P1 and P3 that acknowledged the greater changes to their voice. In a pre-study and post-study comparison, it was observed that P1 and P3 lowered their range, with P1 descending 5 semitones and P3 descending 3 semitones. And finally, confidence. I wanted to find out if these exercises in collaboration with their singing increased their confidence. It was, I suppose, a bit of an aside, but interestingly, P3 recognised a noticeable change in their confidence. From week 1, the breath and posture felt more relaxed and she felt more confident singing, and then by the end she felt so confident that she was quite prepared to record herself singing and post it on a social media site, something that she cited she had never done before. With this newfound confidence, I asked her if she would be so kind to record a version of a song that she's rehearsing for her graded 6 contemporary singing exam, then complete the exercises and then re-record that same song again to hear and compare the difference. And here you can see groupings of themes around the listener perception from the before to the after, the changes in their control, changes in their breath, in their phrasing and in their performance. citing that there was a noticeable change, a clarity throughout. And the second time, there was a purity where it wasn't there before, and also how mature the voice sounded, having done the exercises. So the practicalities of undertaking these exercises highlights that the P1 and P3 experiences of benefits to their breath, their posture, their pitch and their resonance also aligns with them completing 3 and 4 highlights them completing their exercises at the allotted times each week. So they scheduled themselves, they gave themselves a day, they gave themselves a specific time, which gave them regularity. However, for P2, they were a lot more random with regards to aligning their practice regimen between lessons, which meant they were slightly disorganized and not always able to commit at the times that they had maybe put aside. It kind of gone out of their mind. So because of this, I feel like the ones that committed to the regular regimen, they were the ones that saw the greater benefits from their experience. So the question, how has your awareness of the relationship between your body and voice altered? All 3 participants recognised that they'd improved their understanding. They discovered something about their body and voice relationship and realised the impacts and benefits of incorporating voice and body exercises, in particular exercises in anticipation of singing, in preparation of the body. And that P2 even said, even though they had their limited outcomes, did actually say that they wanted to now do a combination of physical and vocal warm-ups to prepare their voice for singing practice. So to discuss this further, I wanted to look at the experience of perceived changes to singing. Well, Gish et al. Did a survey and they asked participants to respond as to whether they used non-singing exercises as part of their singing regimen. And interestingly, 92% of their respondents said that they did, using stretches for the face, breathing exercises and postural alignment. McHenry Evans' 2016 study found that aerobic activity actually improves sound pressure level, estimated subglottal pressure, airflow and vocal efficiency without using any vocal exercises, again highlighting the importance of using physical exercise in preparation for singing. In addition to that, Cook, Cunningham and Grady in 2018 has found that vocal and physical warm-ups for the participants of their choirs perceived the most spectral energy. With regards to the experience of practice schedules, attrition is an important thing, as in it's hard sometimes to fit in daily practice or even to schedule in set days when you would do your exercise. However, Powers, Howley and Quindry in 21 and Schneider, Dennehy and Saxon suggest 2 to 4 days a week with a rest day in between will give you optimal strength improvement, reiterating the importance of a practice schedule and a regimen that can then adapt and change the inefficiencies to make them much more efficient then for singing. Highlighted by this is Roth and Verdolini Abbott. They say that using directive teaching methods to direct verbally how to correct your posture is less effective than procedural learning. So once again, by equipping teachers with procedural measures to help students realign their body with movement rather than declarative statements, we're going to help students then feel that they can have better use of their body with movement rather than static held positions. Correa et al., Wilson Arboleda and Frederick also say that practice should be ongoing. It should be continual. Adaptations in our daily life constantly influence our bodies and potentially then our voice. So in order to contribute to vocal ease, we want to be able to continue those exercises. Thank you. Experience of kinesthetic awareness is a challenge, not only for professionals and novices. To know what they are doing is the same as the belief of what they think that they are doing. This was highlighted by Watson and Hicks in 1985. Sometimes our kinesthetic awareness is debauched, as suggested by Alexander, cited in Head 1996. So challenging Wolf's theory of internal versus external attention, We need to have a level of kinesthetic awareness that enables us to address any postural imbalances or challenges or difficulties within our voice. And Mauld, Allen and Zeller suggest that an inclusive awareness enables a singer to tune into that focus that best serves them at that time, either performing or for learning, which then links into a reflective learning model for students. Actually, by encouraging them to journal their experiences, for finding out what's working for me, how do they need to change, how do I go about it with open-mindedness. It would encourage students to recognise postural misalignments that might be affecting their voice and find ways of developing skills that would encourage them to have independent learning. So in summary, the research findings and literature support the use of exercises to address postural imbalances to improve a singer's body and voice. And by addressing day-to-day habits and improving the vocal ease, the research suggests that there will be an increase in control of the voice and also in confidence. Reflecting on my own professional development, I recognise that using the strengths-based approach to reflection that I use exercises in lessons. However, it might now be the case that I need to redress what the practice regimen is in between lessons in order for the students to gain benefit and also retain and restore their postural alignment in singing lessons. Reflecting in action and benefiting from increased awareness, I am also having increased movement in my lessons, so I'm keeping myself physically ready for singing. And the limitations of my perspective was that I hadn't really given much credit for the lack of kinesthetic awareness of my students, and I'll be incorporating more kinesthetic awareness into lessons and also encouraging independent learning. So the wider ramifications were to share the research outcomes with the wider teaching community and to develop other evidence-based targeted exercises for singers, tackling other postural misalignments or challenges that are experienced by teachers in a singing studio. For future research, I'd be interested in some pragmatic action research to take those lived experiences and combine them with measured outcomes with the anticipation that I could have a larger scale evaluation of the real world experiences of students and singers alike and the impacts of bodywork on the singing voice and its application in the teaching studio. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Keith Porter, who was supporting me through this with regards to advice and guidance on picking exercises over the course of the project. And I would like to say thank you very much for your time.